The nuclear fuel cycle. Just what what would that mean? That cycle begins out on the side of a mountain somewhere, on the site of an Indian reservation. Begins somewhere off in the mountainside somewhere where uranium is mined. Uranium in content that is minuscule. So the uranium is mined and mined and mined. The mountain is mined, and from that uranium is extracted, leaving behind tons, tens of thousands, millions of tons of earth in the open, raw, crunched up into tiny little sands and grain particles that were never available before to the environment, to the local environment, to an environment that had been there for a long time. So leachates come out of those tailings. Mine tailings is what they're called. Those materials are sent to a processing plant where they're further refined. Another layer of cleaning and scrubbing and purifying and stripping away things you don't want in ultra high purity levels now. Minuscule chemicals that might or might not be good for something else, but that's where you are. Just to get uranium. This is what you're selling is uranium, but on the way by, you're leaving these little ripples in the ponds of life. So that uranium goes in somewhere and becomes a fuel pellet. Fuel pellet's got a specific size, but around that fuel pellet are more ultra high purity materials specifically designed and studied to be able to hold and withstand the energies, the heats, the radiation, the coefficients of expansion and contraction in taking a fuel rod from room temperature up to, what's that? The temperature of a reactor core. Good question. Now, never mind that the efficiency of that transfer, converting it to steam, to convert to use to run a turbine, it's totally inefficient. Just not. They don't even speak to how much energy is wasted inside that boiling water reactor. But every 2 years it gets refueled. It has to have a new fuel bundles, some new fuel bundles. You can find information about it. Sometimes it's full replacement, sometimes it's partial replacement. If the Department of Defense or Energy gets involved, they'll give you specific bundles with mixed oxide fuels. Part of the reactor or the whole reactor may go into those mixed oxide fuels, making something else, creating more things for something else. So lots of uses for a reactor. Anyway, these commercial reactors, refueled every 2 years. With that refueling comes all of the maintenance that's been put off as long as possible to be done, because shutting this plant down during runtime is just not a good idea. It really is not a good idea. Once they start, they should stay running. You don't turn them off and on very well, very easily. So now you have every plant in America, every 2 years, has a crew of roughly 2,000 people. Now, they might be a dozen at a time. They're specialists, they're technicians, they're doing ultrasound testing on specific pipes and areas. They're doing replacement of just ongoing preventative maintenance things, because the facility does not keep that kind of staff on hand. The facility keeps operation staffs for that 2 good years of profitable runtime. Just enough people to keep it going, moving forward. Enough maintenance to do what has to be done. But knowing out there in a large reserve of kind of specialized tradesmen, you can find some resources, and they'll move. They'll come buy a house in the neighborhood for 2 years to do a job for you, because the jobs pay well, the benefits are good, and to know the job is done right helps give you some assurance that something's being done right. So, nuclear fuel cycle. 6 bundles are put in, meaning 6 bundles are taken out. They're done. Their life is done. The millions of dollars, the possible harms from the mine tailings, the polluted waters, are done after 2 years. maybe 4 years, depending on what that true rotation cycle of the fuel bundles are, which depends on the patent and who built the reactors and what type of fuels they do use. So, that fuel cycle. Now those bundles sit in fuel pools, cooling, getting down to a cool enough temperature in a very strictly controlled environment. Because you should not shock these materials. Thermal shock, chemical shocks, oxidation, whatever it is, bad pH, other chemicals that could be in the water. So now you've got half a dozen bundles, a dozen bundles, more than that, sitting in a pool cooling. You call in another crew because some of the bundles in the back of the pool have been cooling for 20 years. They're ready to put into dry casks. Those dry casks you're going to store on another side of a new lot that you pay to store the dry casks, because the promises of managing the nuclear fuel cycle have never been made. The promises made in all those commissioning documents of education, studies, the sciences surrounding these marvelous materials just disappeared. So this is the nuclear fuel cycle as it is. Where that fuel comes from, what nation state makes that fuel, or what nation corporation makes that fuel. Oh, there's a conversation. Global thermonuclear warfare level conversation. But meanwhile, this fuel cycle goes on. And the industry is trying to sell and place more of these reactors across the country. So every 2 years, 1,000 people come through over months and visit your neighborhood and work and then move on, or try and hang around when there aren't any other jobs. And you have the Hanford Reservation. So, peace is out. Another piece. Peace.